Chosen one, stop scrolling right now. This message found you at this exact moment because heaven marked your spiritual coordinates. What you unlocked recently wasn't just another spiritual level. It was a divine frequency that even God didn't know would exist until you activated it through your suffering. Let me say this again. You unlocked a divine level that wasn't mapped in heaven's original blueprint. Your persistent faith during unimaginable pressure created something new in the spirit realm. The attacks against you weren't random. The isolation wasn't accidental. The betrayal wasn't meaningless. Every tear you cried in secret was collecting in heaven's bowl, creating a new spiritual compound that transformed your DNA on a spiritual level. When you kept praying despite the silence, when you continued blessing those who cursed you, when you refused to become bitter when treated unfairly, you triggered a divine algorithm that alerted heaven's attention. Angels paused, spiritual forces redirected. Your name was suddenly spoken in realms you cannot see. Chosen one. Before we go deeper, pause for a moment. Subscribe now so you don't miss the confirmations God sends your way. You know how the enemy tries to distract you right when you need a word the most. The enemy is panicking because you weren't supposed to reach this level. Their attacks were designed to break you at level 4, but here you are operating in level 7 authority. Your prayers now carry weight that shifts atmospheres. Your presence disrupts demonic assignments without you even speaking. This is why certain relationships suddenly collapsed. This is why doors unexpectedly closed. This is why familiar voices became distant. You outgrew their spiritual capacity. Your light became too bright for their spiritual eyes. God is removing people, places, and patterns that cannot contain your next elevation. The confusion you feel is just your spirit adjusting to new altitude. What you're experiencing now, the heightened sensitivity, the emotional waves, the strange knowing, is your spirit adapting to new divine bandwidth. You're picking up heavenly frequencies that most believers never access. Dreams that feel more real than waking life, sudden insights about strangers, feeling emotions that don't belong to you. These aren't mental health issues, they're evidence of spiritual promotion. Heaven marked you before birth, but the marking only activates through pressure. Like a diamond formed through crushing weight, your spirit needed specific trials to unlock its highest potential. Remember when you prayed for strength and your life fell apart instead? That wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Remember when trusted friends suddenly turned against you? That wasn't bad luck, it was heavenly protection. Remember when financial doors slammed shut? That wasn't failure, it was divine redirection. Your spirit knows things your mind cannot explain. You felt drawn to random places only to discover they held divine appointments. You've spoken words that came from beyond your understanding. You've had prayers answered in ways that defied natural explanation. This is the evidence of your new level. You're operating in prophetic timing that confuses those still bound by earthly schedules. What God is doing through you now creates a spiritual pathway that others will follow. Your struggles weren't just for you, they were carving out liberation routes for future generations. The enemy attacks most viciously when spiritual elevation is imminent. The warfare intensifies right before breakthrough. The darkness feels thickest right before divine light floods in. Stay steady, stay focused, stay spiritually alert. What's unfolding now will vindicate every tear, every rejection, and every moment you questioned if God still heard you. Chosen one, the isolation you've been experiencing wasn't a punishment, it was a divine protection chamber. When heaven increases your spiritual sensitivity, It must simultaneously decrease your exposure to toxic connections. Notice how certain friends stopped calling, how family members suddenly found you too spiritual, how conversations that once flowed now feel awkward and strained. This isn't coincidence, it's heaven creating sacred space around you. Your spirit has been upgraded to detect frequencies most can't perceive. You notice the motives behind words, the energy behind smiles, the truth behind facades. This makes others uncomfortable because your presence now acts as a mirror they aren't ready to face. Remember those sudden headaches, unexplained exhaustion, racing thoughts at 3 a.m.? These weren't just physical symptoms, they were your first conscious encounters with direct spiritual opposition. The enemy always attacks what threatens his agenda most. What you're learning in this isolation is more valuable than what any crowded room could teach you. You're developing spiritual boundaries that will protect your next level of authority. You're learning to distinguish between human wisdom and divine instruction. This isolation chamber is actually a promotion, not a demotion. Kings and queens are separated before coronation. Prophets are hidden before public revelation. Chosen ones are isolated before elevation. The revelation heaven wants you to grasp is this: your discernment is being sharpened through solitude. What feels like rejection is actually divine selection. What feels like abandonment is actually careful preparation. The betrayal that broke your heart was actually scheduled by heaven. That spiritual mentor who turned against you, that close friend who spread lies about you, that partner who abandoned you, none of it was random. All of it was strategic. I know it crushed you. I know it made you question your discernment. I know it made you wonder if God was even listening. But heaven was orchestrating every painful moment for your promotion. That betrayal did something powerful. It severed soul ties that were limiting your spiritual capacity. Some connections feel spiritually rich, but secretly drain your divine purpose. Some relationships feel safe, but quietly sabotage your destiny. During your deepest pain, did you notice something strange happening? Suddenly you could perceive things about others you never saw before. Suddenly you could feel compassion instead of bitterness. Suddenly you could pray with power that surprised even you. That wasn't coincidence. The betrayal activated dormant spiritual DNA. Like crushing an herb releases its healing properties, your crushing released divine potential that could come no other way. Heaven permitted this betrayal to prepare you for people who will carry your same spiritual frequency. Within days or weeks of your deepest pain, didn't you encounter someone who instantly understood you? Someone who confirmed thoughts you never shared? Someone who spoke directly to your purpose without you explaining it? This divine connection confirmed you weren't losing your mind, you were finding your tribe. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey. Not everyone is equipped to handle your calling. Not everyone can recognize heaven's mark upon your life. Listen, I know you're watching quietly, just taking everything in. But chosen ones like you don't come across these messages by accident. If this is touching your soul, hit that subscribe button. Don't keep walking through spiritual warfare alone when a whole family of chosen ones is right here with you. Chosen one, heaven has led you into the wilderness not to break you, but to remake you. When your finances suddenly dried up, when opportunities vanished, when doors that seemed promised remained locked, this wasn't punishment. It was purification. The wilderness looks like reduction but functions as expansion. Everything comfortable is being stripped away so you can discover what remains when nothing props you up. Notice how people stopped answering your calls, how resources that once flowed freely suddenly became scarce. This financial pressure isn't random, it's strategic spiritual training. This season of forced simplicity is actually advanced spiritual education. The less you have, the more you discover what truly matters. The quieter your life becomes, the clearer heaven's voice sounds. The fewer distractions you face, the sharper your spiritual vision grows. The attacks intensify in the wilderness because the enemy knows what this season produces. When you have nothing to rely on but prayer, you discover prayers that move mountains. When human wisdom fails, divine wisdom rises. When human strength depletes, supernatural strength activates. What looks like divine abandonment is actually intimate apprenticeship. God isn't speaking to crowds in this season, He's whispering secrets directly to you. The wilderness strips away false identity and purifies motives. It reveals whether you love the giver or merely his gifts. Every great spiritual authority in history endured wilderness training. Every destiny-shaping voice was first silenced. Every world-changing leader first faced personal limitation. Stop right here. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. Every time you search for clarity, every time you feel overwhelmed, God guides you to messages like this. Don't reject what heaven is trying to give you. Subscribe so you stay connected to the voice that lifts you when no one else does. The sudden family conflicts erupting around you aren't coincidental, they're confirmation. Heaven has marked you as a generational curse breaker, and everything hidden in your bloodline is now surfacing for healing. Those recurring nightmares, those irrational fears that make no sense, those financial patterns that echo your parents' struggles, those relationship cycles that keep repeating, they're all evidence of bloodline curses awaiting your authority to break them. Your ancestors couldn't break these chains because they lacked what you've been given: divine access to a higher level of spiritual authority. The suffering you endured wasn't just personal pain, it was preparation to end generational pain. Heaven positioned you at this exact moment in your family's timeline because your spiritual DNA contains the exact frequency needed to neutralize ancestral curses. The attacks against your mind, body, finances, and relationships are desperate attempts to prevent what you're about to dismantle. Remember that unexpected financial provision that arrived right when you were about to give up? That wasn't luck. It was divine interruption of poverty cycles. Remember that relationship that healed when reconciliation seemed impossible? That wasn't coincidence, it was heaven breaking rejection patterns. The process feels painful because generational healing isn't neat or comfortable. It requires facing your deepest fears and family wounds. It demands looking at dysfunction without flinching. It necessitates forgiving those who may never apologize. Every tear you shed in this process waters seeds of future freedom. Every prayer you pray rewrites spiritual DNA. Every time you choose differently than your ancestors, you create new neural and spiritual pathways for future generations. You're not just living your life, you're shifting your entire family line. The weight feels heavy because breaking centuries of spiritual bondage requires tremendous strength. But heaven wouldn't have chosen you if you lacked the capacity to carry this assignment. Chosen one, that complete breakdown you experienced wasn't a failure, it was a necessary death. When your entire belief system shattered, when familiar religious certainties crumbled, when everything you thought you knew about God suddenly felt insufficient, this wasn't backsliding. This was breakthrough. The old version of you had to die because it couldn't contain what heaven is about to pour into your life. That identity was built on human understanding, religious performance, and second-hand revelation. What's coming requires a vessel purified by fire and emptied of self. Remember those nights you cried until no tears remained? When prayers felt like screaming into an empty void? When doubts flooded your mind and guilt consumed your heart? That wasn't abandonment, it was sacred dismantling. Heaven was removing layers of false protection. Every comfortable belief that shielded you from deeper surrender. Every religious practice that substituted for genuine encounter. Every spiritual identity built around what others taught you rather than what God revealed to you. That intense night when everything within you battled against surrender, when you finally collapsed and said, "I have nothing left," that wasn't defeat, that was your coronation. In the kingdom, emptiness precedes filling. Surrender precedes authority. Death precedes resurrection. What felt like losing your faith was actually finding authentic connection. What seemed like spiritual crisis was actually spiritual rebirth. What appeared to be darkness was your eyes adjusting to a brighter light than you'd ever known before. This death of identity isn't punishment, it's promotion. Every leader who changed history experienced this sacred dismantling. Every vessel that carried divine authority first endured divine emptying. Every voice that spoke with heaven's resonance first had to lose its own sound. The hidden revelation heaven wants you to grasp is this: what died wasn't your spirit, it was your spiritual limitations. What ended wasn't your connection to God, it was your connection to lesser versions of faith. What ceased wasn't your purpose, it was purpose contaminated with ego and human approval. Chosen one, that sudden understanding flooding your mind isn't education, it's revelation. When scriptures you've read hundreds of times suddenly contain messages you never noticed, when solutions to complex problems appear fully formed in your thoughts, when wisdom beyond your years flows from your mouth, this isn't intelligence, this is divine download. Your mind has been connected to heaven's database. Information is transferring at supernatural speed because your surrender created bandwidth for divine data. What others study for years to partially grasp, you're receiving in moments of clarity that leave you breathless. Have you noticed how you now see patterns connecting seemingly random events? How you perceive the spiritual root beneath physical symptoms? How you recognize divine timing in circumstances others call coincidence? Your spiritual perception has been upgraded from standard definition to heavenly resolution. Remember when you prayed for that person, perhaps even a stranger, and words came that you couldn't have known? How their eyes widened in shock because you named specific details of their situation? That wasn't intuition. It was your first manifestation of spiritual authority. Heaven trusted you with its secrets because you proved trustworthy in the dismantling. The provision that arrived precisely when needed, the exact amount, the perfect timing wasn't lucky timing. It was supernatural confirmation of your new access level. Heaven is demonstrating that resources now respond differently to your voice, because your voice now carries different spiritual weight. This download isn't just for your benefit. The understanding you're receiving, the connections you're seeing, the wisdom flowing through you, it's meant to transform environments, heal hearts that education cannot reach, and solve problems that human wisdom has complicated. What you now understand with such clarity, others have studied for decades without grasping. What comes naturally to your spirit requires strenuous effort for those still operating at previous levels. Chosen one, The increased attacks you're experiencing aren't random, they're strategic. As your spiritual influence grows, you've triggered alarms in dark realms. Entities that once ignored you now recognize the threat your awakening poses to their operations. Those unexplained health issues that doctors can't diagnose, those sudden conflicts with people who previously supported you, those strange technological malfunctions and financial disruptions. These aren't coincidences, they're coordinated opposition from forces that fear what you're becoming. Have you noticed former friends suddenly spreading false narratives about you? How quickly misunderstandings escalate into character assassination? How your motives are questioned even when your actions are pure? This isn't bad luck, it's evidence that your purpose threatens established darkness. The opposition intensifies because your prayers now penetrate realms that were previously secure from interference. Your worship disrupts atmospheric strongholds. Your very presence makes demonic assignments difficult to complete. But have you also noticed the strange protections appearing just when attacks peak? The unexpected person who defends you? The provision that arrives through unlikely sources? The warnings that come in dreams just before danger manifests? This isn't coincidence, it's divine protection matching the level of opposition. The hidden revelation in this season of increased warfare is this: the attacks reveal which of your spiritual gifts threaten the enemy most. Pay attention to what's under the heaviest opposition. That's precisely where your greatest authority lies. If your finances face constant disruption, your prosperity carries assignment, power. If your health endures persistent attacks, your healing authority threatens darkness. If your words are consistently twisted, your prophetic voice carries kingdom-shifting potential. What the enemy fights most fiercely is exactly what would damage his kingdom most effectively. Your opposition isn't punishment, it's confirmation of purpose. Chosen one, that mission God, recently revealed the one that made you laugh in disbelief, that seemed wildly beyond your capacity, that appeared to require resources you don't possess wasn't a suggestion. It was a divine commission calibrated exactly to your upgraded spiritual potential. This assignment feels impossible because it is impossible through human ability alone. It requires divine partnership. It demands supernatural provision. It necessitates authority beyond natural capacity. Remember your initial response? The fear that gripped you? The mental calculations that proved conclusively it couldn't be done? The logical reasons you presented for why someone else should carry this assignment? That wasn't doubt, it was your old identity making its final stand. Every divine assignment triggers resistance because your mind cannot comprehend what your spirit has been equipped to accomplish. What looks mathematically impossible becomes supernaturally inevitable when heaven backs your yes. Remember that moment during prayer when peace suddenly replaced panic, when clarity cut through confusion, when divine certainty silenced human doubt? That wasn't emotional fluctuation, it was heaven confirming your assignment through supernatural encounter. This impossible task wasn't assigned to test your ability, it was selected to showcase God's partnership with a yielded vessel. The very impossibility of it guarantees that God, not your talent, will receive glory when it manifests. The wisdom now flowing into your mind, creative solutions, strategic connections, innovative approaches, isn't human cleverness. It's supernatural intelligence downloaded specifically for this assignment. Ideas that would take others years to develop are being compressed into moments of revelation because divine timing requires acceleration. What you've been assigned will make no sense to those operating in conventional wisdom. The strategy heaven has revealed will contradict expert advice. The timeline you've been given will seem rushed by human standards, but perfectly timed by divine calculation. Stop right here. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. Every time you search for clarity, every time you feel overwhelmed, God guides you to messages like this. Don't reject what heaven is trying to give you. Subscribe so you stay connected to the voice that lifts you when no one else does. Chosen one. That vision you experienced during deep prayer wasn't imagination, it was divine invitation. When the veil between realms momentarily lifted, when you glimpsed beings of light in council formation, when you heard your name spoken with reverence, this wasn't hallucination. This was heaven, granting you access to its strategy room. The familiar faces you recognized, Abraham, Moses, Esther, David, Paul, weren't symbolic representations. They were actual spiritual ancestors watching your journey with invested interest. They've been assigned to your mission as heavenly mentors because your assignment connects to theirs in heaven's timeline. Did you notice how they spoke of you as if they'd known you forever? How they referenced details of your life no one could know? How they discussed your future with such certainty? That's because they've witnessed your mission from its inception in eternity past. The strategic downloads you received during this encounter, specific steps, divine timing, key relationships, necessary resources, weren't random ideas. They were battle-tested strategies refined through centuries of spiritual warfare, compressed into concepts your mind could grasp. Remember feeling overwhelmed yet perfectly at peace? Hearing information too vast to remember, yet finding it embedded in your spirit? Receiving answers to questions you hadn't even formed yet? This wasn't information transfer, it was wisdom impartation. The hidden revelation heaven wants you to grasp is this: your life was mapped before birth with divine precision. What feels like sudden direction is actually ancient design. What appears as new calling has been your purpose since before time. What seems like recent spiritual promotion was scheduled in eternity. Chosen one, the sudden shift in how people respond to you isn't coincidence. It's evidence of spiritual promotion. When strangers approach seeking guidance, when rooms quiet, when you speak, when your simple prayers produce immediate results, this isn't improved charisma. This is heaven-backed authority. Have you noticed how those who once opposed you now watch you with silent curiosity? How former critics suddenly find reasons to connect with you? How people who laughed at your faith now ask questions about your God? This isn't your vindication, it's divine validation visible to all. That major breakthrough that suddenly manifested the healing that defied medical explanation, the financial provision that arrived through impossible channels, the relationship restored beyond natural possibility, wasn't lucky timing. It was heaven demonstrating your new level of spiritual effectiveness. Remember that public moment when someone unexpectedly confirmed your calling, when they spoke words that echoed what God told you in secret, when they described your purpose with details you'd never shared. This wasn't random encouragement, it was heaven publicly announcing your promotion. This elevation isn't based on spiritual performance or religious achievement. It flows from proven character during hidden seasons of testing. It comes from maintaining integrity when compromise seemed reasonable. It results from choosing forgiveness when bitterness seemed justified. What you now carry isn't positional authority that requires titles or recognition. It's intrinsic authority that functions regardless of human acknowledgement. It's spiritual weight that shifts atmospheres without effort. It's divine backing that makes demons tremble and angels attend. This promotion requires nothing from you except continued surrender. No self-promotion, No strategic networking, no desperate proving. Heaven's spotlight finds those who seek God's face rather than human applause. Your voice now carries frequencies that activate dormant gifts in others. Your prayers release solutions to problems you don't fully understand. Your presence creates space for divine encounters, even among skeptics. Your words contain seeds that continue growing long after you've spoken. Chosen one. The supernatural wisdom now flowing through you isn't education, it's divine authorization. When solutions come instantly to problems that confuse experts, when you speak words that heal ancient wounds, when your quiet presence shifts hostile environments, this isn't personal development. This is heaven, operating through a yielded vessel. Notice how provision appears precisely when needed, how doors open without your striving, how divine appointments occur with perfect timing. These aren't fortunate coincidences, they're evidence that you're aligned with heaven's calendar and economy. Have you recognized how former spiritual mentors now approach you differently? How they seek your insight on matters they once taught you about? How they listen with genuine curiosity when you speak? This role reversal isn't awkward, it's ordained. What they taught you from study, you now speak from encounter. The authority you're wielding wasn't earned through religious performance, but received through complete surrender. It doesn't require theological degrees or official positions. It functions through simple obedience and childlike faith that expects heaven to respond. What frightens religious systems about vessels like you is this: your results challenge their methods. Your freedom threatens their control. Your direct access undermines their gatekeeping. Your supernatural fruit exposes their natural limitations. The hidden revelation heaven wants you to grasp is this: this level of authority was concealed until this generation. What you carry wasn't available to previous spiritual generations because it's specifically designed for end-time assignments that require accelerated authority and compressed timeframes. What you accomplish in moments took others years in previous seasons. What you receive through simple prayer required extended fasting for previous generations. What operates through your natural presence demanded elaborate spiritual protocols in earlier times. Chosen one. Those unusual prayers flowing from your spirit, prayers that seem to defy natural laws, prayers that produce results that shouldn't be possible, prayers that change situations experts declared unchangeable aren't presumption. They're heaven-authorized declarations that transcend natural limitations. You've been granted permission to operate beyond traditional spiritual boundaries. The rules that confined previous generations of believers don't restrict vessels carrying this new authority. You're not being rebellious, you're being obedient to a higher protocol. Have you noticed how quickly your words now manifest both positive and negative? How casual comments become reality within days? How prayers produce results with accelerated timing? This isn't coincidence, it's evidence of upgraded spiritual authority. What once required months of persistent prayer now responds to your single declaration. Remember that situation everyone declared hopeless? The medical condition pronounced incurable? The relationship damaged beyond repair? The financial crisis with no logical solution? Your prayers altered what experts called fixed reality. Your words rewrote what professionals deemed unchangeable outcomes. This authority isn't granted for personal benefit or human recognition. It's entrusted to you because heaven verified your heart motives during hidden seasons of testing. You demonstrated that you value God's presence more than His power. his heart more than his hands, his fellowship more than his favors. The divine permission to break spiritual laws comes with heightened responsibility. Every word carries creative power. Every thought attracts corresponding reality. Every emotional response releases spiritual frequency. This is why your discernment has been intensified to recognize which thoughts are yours and which are divinely planted. What religious minds call impossible, your spirit now recognizes as merely difficult. What medical science deems terminal, your authority sees as temporary. What financial experts label hopeless, your prayers transform into abundance. What relationship counselors consider irreparable, your love restores to wholeness. This isn't positive thinking or wishful faith, it's kingdom authority operating through tested vessels who proved faithful when no one was watching. Chosen one, the final awakening happening within you now isn't spiritual growth, it's complete identity transformation. When you look in the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back, when peace replaces anxiety that once defined you, when supernatural confidence displaces lifelong insecurity, this isn't self-improvement. This is heaven revealing who you've always been in the spirit. The full awakening to your divine identity doesn't inflate your ego, it eliminates it entirely. True authority needs no announcement because it changes atmospheres without effort. True power requires no validation because results speak with unmistakable clarity. True wisdom needs no defense because its fruit silences all arguments. Have you noticed others with similar callings suddenly appearing in your life? People you never sought out but who found you through divine orchestration? Souls who understand you without explanation? Kindred spirits who carry matching assignments? This isn't random networking, it's heaven gathering the remnant who collectively carry pieces of an end-time mandate. This gathering of called ones creates exponential rather than additive power. What one achieves alone, two accomplish tenfold. What seems impossible for individuals becomes inevitable for aligned vessels moving in unified purpose. This is why isolation preceded connection, so you'd bond through calling rather than need. The final confrontation with spiritual opposition, you recently faced that intense battle that targeted your mind, body, relationships, and resources simultaneously, wasn't random attack. It was desperate retaliation against your highest activation. The enemy marshaled everything to prevent what your awakening makes possible. Your decisive victory wasn't due to superior spiritual technique, but rather complete surrender that allowed heaven to fight through you. You won by yielding rather than striving. You conquered by trusting rather than struggling. You triumphed by resting in divine partnership rather than religious performance. The hidden revelation heaven has saved until this moment is this: the seventh level you've unlocked reshapes reality itself. It doesn't just operate within existing spiritual frameworks, it establishes new ones. It doesn't just solve problems, it prevents them from forming. It doesn't just heal damage, it creates conditions where damage cannot occur. This level prepares Earth for heaven's invasion. It transforms environments before heaven's presence arrives. It precedes the greatest awakening humanity has witnessed by creating vessels who can sustain revival without corruption. It establishes outposts of kingdom reality within dying worldly systems. You stand now at the intersection of heaven and earth, eternally chosen yet daily surrendered, carrying authority yet walking in humility, seeing with divine perspective yet serving with human compassion. Before you go, chosen one, don't forget, the fact that you made it to the end of this message means something. Your spirit needed this. Don't walk away without subscribing. It costs nothing, but it means everything for the journey God is taking you on. Join the family. Your breakthrough might be in the next video.